In northern Thailand, people believe the dead never leave empty-handed. If something is buried incorrectly, if a promise is left unfulfilled, or if an object is taken when it should not be, the dead will return, not to haunt, but to reclaim. This is not a story about revenge. It is a story about debt. And what happens when the living refuse to let go of what never belonged to them. This is the story of the dead who came back to ask for their things. Chapter 1. The house at the end of the alley. Our house stood at the very end of a narrow alley, a place where the streetlights stopped as if they were afraid to go any further. At night, darkness swallowed everything beyond the last pool of yellow light, leaving our wooden house half hidden in shadow, half exposed to whatever wandered unseen. In northern Thailand, people believe that places abandoned by light are never truly empty. They say spirits prefer corners the living avoid, places where footsteps grow hesitant and voices instinctively lower. I grew up hearing those stories, but like many others, I treated them as old superstitions meant to scare children into coming home early. Until my grandmother died. She had lived in that house longer than anyone could remember. Some said she arrived there before the alley even existed, when the land was still rice fields and banana trees. She knew every creak of the wooden floor, every sound the house made at night. She used to tell me, half joking and half serious, that the house remembered her just as she remembered it. On the day she died, rain fell without warning, the sky darkened in the middle of the afternoon, and the wind pushed through the alley like a long, uneasy breath. My grandmother collapsed near the kitchen doorway, her lips moving as if she was trying to finish a sentence she had started years ago. Whatever she wanted to say, she never did. The elders whispered that dying with unfinished words was dangerous. A soul that leaves with unanswered thoughts often lingers, they said, looking for what it forgot behind. That night, after her body was taken away, the house felt different. The air was heavier, thicker, as if it resisted every breath I took. The old black cat that had slept beside her chair refused to enter the house. Instead, it sat at the threshold, staring into the darkness of the kitchen corner, its back arched, its eyes wide and unblinking. Then it began to howl. Not the cry of an animal, but something closer to grief, long, trembling, and filled with fear. I stood frozen, watching the shadows gather where my grandmother used to sit, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if the house at the end of the alley had truly been empty all along. And if my grandmother had really left it. Chapter 2. A death that was not complete. In the days following my grandmother's death, the elders came and went in hushed groups, their voices low, their expressions uneasy. In our village, death was never considered simple. A person could stop breathing, but that did not always mean their soul was ready to leave. They said my grandmother's passing was not complete. She had died too suddenly. No final blessing, no proper farewell to the house she loved. Most troubling of all, she had not been able to tell us what she was trying to say before her body gave out. In Thai belief, words left unspoken weigh heavily on the dead, tying them to the world of the living like invisible ropes. During the funeral preparations, strange things began to happen. The incense burned unevenly, its smoke twisting downward instead of rising. Candles flickered even when there was no wind. More than once, I felt a presence behind me while arranging offerings, only to turn and find empty air. On the third night, as monks chanted prayers for her spirit, the black cat returned. It slipped quietly into the house and sat directly in front of my grandmother's empty chair. Its tail lashed the floor, slow and deliberate. When the chanting reached its final verse, the cat let out a sharp cry and bolted outside, knocking over a bowl of rice left for the dead. Rice scattered across the floor. My aunt went pale. "She's missing something," she whispered. After the cremation, we brought her ashes home, placing them on the small wooden altar she had used every morning. Yet the house refused to feel peaceful. At night, the floorboards creaked as if someone were pacing slowly from room to room. The scent of wet earth drifted through closed windows. Sometimes, I heard soft coughing, the exact sound my grandmother used to make when the nights grew cold. One evening, I noticed the offerings untouched. The food remained fresh, the water clear, as if no spirit had come to accept them. The monks said nothing, but their eyes lingered on the altar longer than they should have. That was when I understood something was wrong. My grandmother had not left. She was still here, waiting, searching, unfinished. And whatever she needed, she intended to come back for it.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The First Knock at Night. The knocking began on the third night after we brought my grandmother's ashes home. It was exactly 1:13 a.m. I remember the time clearly because I had just woken from a shallow sleep. The kind where your body rests but your mind remains alert, as if something unseen is watching you breathe. The house was silent, too silent. Even the insects outside had stopped singing. Then came the sound. Cock, cock, cock. It was not loud, not urgent. The knock came slowly, unevenly, as if the hand knocking was weak or trembling. It did not sound like a living person standing at the door. It sounded like someone who had forgotten how to knock properly. I held my breath and listened. The knocking stopped. For a moment, I convinced myself it had been a dream, until it came again. Closer this time, not from the front gate, but from the wooden door leading into the house. The same door my grandmother used every morning when she stepped out to sweep the alley. My skin prickled with cold. No footsteps, no shadow beneath the door. Just the knocking, patient and calm, as if whoever stood outside knew I would eventually answer. I whispered my aunt's name, but my voice died in my throat. The house felt wrong, thick, heavy, pressing inward. The air smelled faintly of rain and old cloth, a scent that belonged to my grandmother's room. Cock, cock. My hand moved on its own. I reached for the door latch, my fingers numb, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake the dead. When I pulled the door open, the alley was empty. No one stood there. The streetlight flickered at the corner, its glow failing to reach the house, just as it always had, but the ground near the doorway was damp, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. Then I felt it. A breath against my ear. Cold, slow. Behind me, a voice rose from the darkness of the house, low, cracked, unmistakably familiar. I came back to take my things. I turned. No one was there. But the wooden floor creaked, softly, under invisible weight, moving deeper into the house. And in that moment, I knew the stories were true. The dead did not always leave empty-handed. Sometimes, they returned to collect what was still theirs. Chapter 4. I came back to take my things. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand still gripping the latch, my heart beating so violently that it hurt. The words echoed inside my head, heavy and unmistakable. I came back to take my things. It was my grandmother's voice. Not a memory, not imagination. It carried the same roughness from years of coughing, the same uneven rhythm she had when she spoke after waking from sleep. But there was something wrong with it, something hollow, as if the sound had traveled a long distance before reaching me. I turned slowly, afraid that any sudden movement would draw attention to myself. The house was empty. At least, that was what my eyes told me. Yet the wooden floor creaked again. One board, then another, bending under an invisible weight. The sound moved toward the storage room at the back of the house, the place where my grandmother kept her old belongings. Things she never allowed anyone to touch. I whispered, "Grandma?" The word felt forbidden the moment it left my mouth. The air grew colder. The smell of damp fabric and incense filled the room, thick enough to taste. The altar candles flickered violently. Even though there was no wind, one of them went out on its own. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. The shadow near the storage room stretched unnaturally long, bending against the wall like a crooked spine. It did not have a clear shape, but I felt its presence with terrifying certainty. Something was standing there, facing the shelves. Then came the sound of cloth being dragged. Slow, careful, as if someone was choosing. I backed away, my feet barely touching the floor, afraid that any noise might remind whatever was inside the house that I was still there. My chest tightened when I heard a soft sigh, familiar, tired, almost relieved. "She knows where it is," my aunt's voice suddenly whispered behind me. I spun around, but she wasn't there. Her bedroom door remained closed. The floor creaked again, closer now. I felt a hand brush past my shoulder, cold, dry, and light, like old paper. My vision blurred, and for a brief moment, I saw her reflection in the dark window. My grandmother stood there, her back bent, her hair wet and clinging to her neck. Her face was lowered, but I knew she was smiling. Not at me. At the shelf where her belongings were kept. Then the shadow moved. And something inside the storage room was taken.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The Shawl That Disappeared. Morning arrived without relief. Sunlight crept into the house like an unwelcome guest, touching the walls but failing to warm them. The air remained cold, heavy with the lingering scent of incense and damp cloth. No one spoke about what had happened during the night, yet everyone moved carefully, as if the house itself might be listening. It was my aunt who noticed it first. She stood in front of the storage shelf, her hands trembling slightly as she counted the folded fabrics. Her lips moved silently, once, twice, then she whispered, "It's gone." The shawl. My grandmother's shawl, thin, brown, and worn soft by decades of use. She wore it every evening when the temperature dropped, wrapping it tightly around her shoulders like armor against the cold. She refused to let anyone wash it, claiming it carried her warmth, her scent, her luck. We searched everywhere. Under the bed, inside the cabinets, even beneath the altar where her ashes rested. The shawl was nowhere to be found. The shelf where it had been folded lay undisturbed. No sign of mess or struggle, as if the fabric had simply faded out of existence. Then we saw the ashes. On the wooden floor, leading from the altar toward the back door, were faint gray marks, small, uneven footprints made of fallen incense ash. They did not belong to any living person. Too narrow, too light, each step careful, deliberate, like someone who feared being noticed. My uncle sank to his knees. "She took it herself," he said, his voice hollow. Outside, beneath the banana tree behind the house, the ground was damp, not from rain, there had been none that night, but from something else. Something that had stood there for a long time. The black cat refused to cross that spot. It hissed, fur standing on end, its eyes fixed on the empty air beneath the leaves. That evening, as the sun disappeared, a chill ran through the house. I heard the faint sound of fabric brushing against wood, slow and rhythmic, as if someone were adjusting a shawl around their shoulders. I did not look. Deep inside, I understood something terrifying. The dead did not take things randomly. They only took what they believed still belonged to them. And once they started, they rarely stopped with just one thing. Chapter 6. The Neighbor Who Saw Her. The first person outside our family to see her was Sam, the old woman who lived 2 houses down the alley. She came to our door just after sunset, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly around a small bag of offerings. She did not step inside. No one ever did after dark anymore. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "Your grandmother, has she been walking around at night?" My aunt's breath caught. No one answered. Sam swallowed and continued, her voice trembling. She said that the night before, while watering her plants, she had seen an elderly woman standing beneath the banana tree behind our house. The woman's hair hung wet against her neck, even though there had been no rain. A thin shawl was wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Sam had recognized her immediately. She looked like she was waiting, Sam said, not lost, not angry, just patient. When Sam called out her name, the woman slowly turned. That was when Sam saw her face. Her eyes were open, but there was nothing inside them. No reflection of light, no movement, just 2 dark hollows, as if something had been removed long ago. Her mouth curved into a small, gentle smile, the kind my grandmother used when she wanted something but didn't wish to ask directly. Then the woman raised one thin hand and pointed toward our house. Sam ran. She did not stop until she reached the main road, where the lights were brighter and the air felt safer. Even then, she said she could feel someone standing just behind her, close enough that she could sense the cold. That night, other neighbors reported strange things. Someone heard soft footsteps pacing the alley at dawn. Another saw an old woman sitting on the ground, folding something carefully in her lap, though there was nothing there. A child began crying uncontrollably, insisting that the grandma with no eyes was watching from the dark. Inside our house, the air grew heavier. The shawl did not return. Instead, we found something else. On the altar, beneath my grandmother's ashes, lay a single damp footprint, small, light, and facing outward, as if she had stopped only briefly before leaving again. Whatever she needed, she was not finished collecting it. And now, the entire alley knew she was back.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. What the Dead Come Back For. After Sam's visit, no one in the alley slept peacefully again. Doors were bolted before sunset. Windows remained shut even in the heat. People spoke in whispers, careful not to mention my grandmother's name too loudly, as if speaking it might invite her to listen. That was when my uncle decided to seek help. He returned before midnight with an old Moor Fai, a spirit medium known throughout the district. The man was thin, his back slightly bent, his eyes sharp in a way that made me uncomfortable. He stepped into our house without hesitation, then stopped abruptly in the center of the room. "She's been here recently," he said, "very recently." The Moor Fai explained that when the dead return to ask for things, it is never without reason. Contrary to what many believe, they do not come back out of greed or malice. They come back because something is wrong. According to old Northern Thai belief, there are three kinds of things the dead may return for. The first is attachment, objects the dead relied on in life. Items soaked with memory and habit. Without them, the spirit feels exposed, incomplete. The second is mistake, something buried incorrectly, missing from the coffin, or replaced by an object that does not belong to them. Such errors confuse the spirit, trapping it between worlds. The third is the most dangerous. Oath-bound objects. Items linked to unresolved promises, borrowed possessions, or belongings taken from another dead person. These objects carry overlapping claims, and when two spirits want the same thing, neither will leave peacefully. The Moor Fai's gaze fell on the altar. He did not touch it. "She took the shawl," he said slowly. "That was attachment." My aunt's hands shook. "Then why is she still here?" The old man closed his eyes. "Because attachment is never the only reason." That night, he warned us not to offer her anything else without guidance. Giving the dead the wrong object could bind them further. Worse, it could make them believe they were still welcome among the living. "If she asks directly," he said, "do not answer. If she calls your name," he continued, "do not respond. And if you see her holding something that does not belong to her," his voice dropped, "leave the house immediately." As he prepared to leave, the candles on the altar went out all at once. In the sudden darkness, I felt a familiar cold brush past my shoulder. Somewhere behind me, something breathed out softly, impatient. The dead, I realized, follow rules. But once those rules are broken, they start making their own. Chapter 8. The coffin that should not have been opened. The mistake revealed itself on the seventh night. It began with the smell. Just before dawn, a foul, metallic scent drifted through the house, sharp enough to sting the nose. It was not the smell of rot, nor incense, it was something older, heavier, like soil that had been disturbed after resting for too long. The Moor Fai returned unannounced. "She's confused," he said the moment he stepped inside. And confusion turns into anger. He told us the only way forward was to confirm the burial. Something, he insisted, had gone wrong. The dead do not wander without reason. And they do not take only one thing unless something else is missing, or something extra has been given to them by mistake. No one argued. By noon, we were standing at the cremation ground. My grandmother's urn was placed aside while the Moor Fai chanted softly. His voice low and steady. The wind grew still. Birds stopped calling. Even the insects seemed to retreat. When the ritual ended, the Moor Fai carefully examined the items that had been burned with her. Then his face changed. "This does not belong to her," he said. From the remains, he lifted a jade bracelet, cracked but intact, its surface darkened with age. None of us recognized it. My grandmother never wore jewelry. She disliked anything that made noise or reflected light. The Moor Fai's fingers trembled. "This bracelet was claimed by another," he whispered. "A woman who died badly." The name came slowly, reluctantly. A woman who had drowned near the river 20 years ago. A death without witnesses, without justice. Her belongings had vanished, her grave unmarked. Her spirit, the villagers believed, had never left. Silence swallowed us whole. Two spirits. One object. Buried together. That is why she came back, the Morphi said, not only to take what was hers, but to return what never should have been given. As the sun dipped lower, a sudden wind swept through the cremation ground. The trees groaned, ash lifted into the air, stinging our eyes. Behind us, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, bare, patient. I did not turn around. The Morphi bowed deeply, his voice shaking. "Forgive us," he said, "we made a mistake." That night, the knocking returned. But this time, it came from inside the house.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. When the dead do not agree. After the coffin was disturbed, the house was never quiet again. The knocking no longer followed a schedule. Sometimes it came just after midnight. Other times, in the middle of the afternoon, when the sun was high and people were awake. It no longer came from the door. It came from the walls. From beneath the floor. From inside the cupboards where my grandmother's belongings had once been kept. At night, the air vibrated with whispers, two distinct voices, overlapping, arguing in a language that sounded broken and unfinished. One voice was familiar, weary, restrained. The other was sharp, wet, and filled with something close to resentment. The Morphi returned and refused to stay after sunset. "They are aware of each other now," he said, "and neither believes the object belongs to the other." That was when the dreams began. I saw my grandmother standing at the edge of the river, her shawl clutched tightly around her shoulders. Across from her stood another woman, her hair tangled, her skin bloated and pale, water dripping endlessly from her sleeves. Between them, suspended in the air, floated the jade bracelet. Both reached for it. Every time my grandmother touched it, the other woman screamed. Every time the drowned woman grabbed it, my grandmother's face twisted in pain, her mouth opening in a silent cry. I woke each night with my chest burning and my ears ringing. Then my cousin fell ill. She spoke to no one, staring at the corner of the room for hours. When she finally spoke, her voice was not her own. "She won't give it back," she said flatly, "and neither will the other." Her skin was ice cold, her pupils dilated, reflecting light in unnatural ways. When the Morphi tried to touch her, she recoiled violently, hissing like an animal trapped underwater. That night, the house shook. Two shadows appeared on the walls, distorted and twitching, moving in opposite directions. Objects fell from shelves, the altar cracked, a thin line splitting the wood beneath the urn. In the chaos, I heard my grandmother's voice clearly for the first time. "I only want what's mine." Then, a second voice answered, low, bubbling, furious. "Then give me back what you took." The floorboards buckled. The Morphi fled. And we were left alone with two dead women, who refused to share. Chapter 10. The night we tried to interfere. The decision was made out of fear, not courage. With the Morphi gone and my cousin slipping further away from herself, my uncle believed there was still something we could do. The bracelet had to be separated, returned, corrected. If the mistake had bound the spirits together, then undoing it might force them apart. That night, we gathered everything related to my grandmother, the shawl, her ashes, the remaining offerings, and placed them in the center of the house. The jade bracelet lay among them, cold and heavy, refusing to look like an object meant for the living. The moment we touched it, the house reacted. The temperature dropped so suddenly that our breath became visible. The walls groaned as if compressed from the outside. Somewhere above us, something dragged itself slowly across the ceiling. My cousin screamed. She collapsed to the floor, her body arching unnaturally, her mouth opening wide enough to tear. From her throat came two voices at once, one pleading, one enraged. "Don't take it away." It was never hers. The candles went out. In the darkness, footsteps surrounded us, bare feet on wood, circling, waiting. I felt fingers brush my hair, my neck, my wrists, testing. The air smelled of river water and old cloth, mixing until I could no longer tell which belonged to whom. My uncle raised the bracelet, shouting prayers he barely remembered. That was when I saw them. Two figures emerged from opposite corners of the room. My grandmother stood hunched and thin, her shawl soaked and clinging to her body. Across from her, the drowned woman rose from the floor, water streaming endlessly from her hair, her face swollen and split with rage. They moved toward each other. The bracelet began to vibrate violently, cutting into my uncle's palm. Blood dripped onto the floor. When the two spirits met, the air shattered with a scream so loud it felt like it split my bones. The shadows collapsed into one another, twisting, tearing, pulling. Then, silence. My uncle fell. The bracelet hit the floor and cracked cleanly in half. My cousin stopped screaming, but none of us felt relief. Because deep down, we knew something worse had happened. We hadn't solved the problem. We had only made the dead aware of our fear.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Confession That Should Not Be Spoken. My uncle survived the fall, but something inside him did not. When he woke the next morning, his eyes were open yet unfocused, as if he were looking at a place far beyond the walls of the house. He did not ask where he was. He did not ask about the bracelet. He only whispered one sentence, again and again, until it scraped the inside of my skull. It was my fault. At first, we thought he was speaking of the ritual, of the broken prayers, of touching what should never have been touched. But as the hours passed, his confession deepened, unraveling like a thread pulled too hard. Years ago, long before my grandmother's death, my uncle had found the jade bracelet near the riverbank. A woman had drowned there, her body discovered days later, swollen and unrecognizable. People said she had been carrying something valuable, something that never resurfaced. My uncle took it. He told himself it was harmless, that the dead no longer needed such things. When my grandmother fell ill, he placed the bracelet among her belongings, believing it would protect her in the next life. Instead, it bound her. The moment he spoke these words aloud, the house reacted violently. The walls trembled, the altar cracked further, splitting down the center. The ashes shifted inside the urn, scraping softly, as if something were trying to turn around. The Morphi returned at dusk, drawn back by fear rather than duty. "You should never have said it," he whispered. "The dead hear confessions better than prayers." That night, the voices returned, but they were no longer arguing. They were laughing. Slow, wet, intimate. My uncle began coughing violently, water spilling from his mouth despite his lungs being clear. His skin grew pale, cold, smelling faintly of the river. In his reflection, his eyes darkened, hollowing just like Psalm had described. He was being claimed. The Morphi bowed deeply toward the altar. "She knows now," he said. "Both of them do." Outside, the banana tree bent sharply, its leaves scraping against the house like fingernails. In the distance, I heard splashing footsteps approaching from the river. Confession, I learned, does not always bring forgiveness. Sometimes, it only tells the dead exactly who to come for next. Chapter 12. The Monk Who Could Not Look. The monk arrived just before dawn. He was younger than I expected, wrapped in a saffron robe that looked too thin for the cold clinging to our house. The moment he stepped inside, he stopped, his eyes lowering immediately, refusing to look straight ahead. "I can feel them," he said quietly. "They are standing very close." Unlike the Morphi, the monk did not chant loudly. He sat on the floor with his back to the altar, eyes half closed, breathing slowly, as if trying not to acknowledge what surrounded him. He told us something the spirit medium had not. "There are moments," the monk said, "when a dead person comes back not to retrieve an object, but to correct a balance. According to old temple teachings, when an item bound by wrongdoing passes between the living and the dead, the universe demands compensation. If the object cannot be returned to its rightful owner, a living substitute may be taken instead." My chest tightened. "A substitute?" The monk nodded but still did not look up. "Someone who has touched the object. Someone who has spoken its truth aloud. Someone who has been acknowledged by the dead." All eyes turned to my uncle. He lay motionless on the mat, breathing shallowly, water seeping from the corners of his mouth. His fingers twitched occasionally, as if grasping something invisible. The monk placed a bowl of holy water between us and the altar. The surface rippled though nothing touched it. "They're deciding," he whispered. Suddenly, the room darkened, not gradually, but instantly. as if the light had been switched off from the world itself. The temperature plunged. I felt my knees weaken. From the corner of my vision, I saw movement. 2 figures stood behind the monk. My grandmother, bent and silent, clutching her shawl. And beside her, the drowned woman, her body dripping endlessly onto the floor, her mouth stretched into a patient smile. The monk's hands shook, sweat poured down his temples. "I cannot look," he whispered. "If I do, they will know I see them, and they will stay." A soft voice filled the room. "Give." Another answered, overlapping it. "Replace." The monk slammed his palms to the floor and began chanting urgently. His voice cracking. "You must choose," he said. "Take the object, or take the debt." The chanting stopped abruptly. The water in the bowl stilled. The 2 figures faded. My uncle gasped sharply, then went still. The monk finally opened his eyes. His face was drained of color. "They have chosen," he said. None of us asked who. Because deep inside, we already knew.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The village that began to leave. My uncle was buried quietly. No chanting echoed through the alley this time. No incense lingered in the air long enough to comfort anyone. The villagers came, bowed once, and left quickly. Their footsteps hurried, their eyes carefully avoiding our house. They all felt it. Whatever had chosen my uncle had not stayed confined within our walls. Within days, strange things began happening throughout the alley. Dogs refused to pass the banana tree behind our house. Children woke screaming in the night, describing an old woman and a wet stranger standing side by side, watching silently from the dark. Water jars cracked on their own. Offerings left at spirit houses rotted overnight. Then people started moving away. One family packed their belongings after hearing footsteps circle their home every night at exactly 1:13 a.m. Another abandoned their house when damp handprints appeared on the walls. Always at shoulder height, always facing inward. No one sold their property. No one asked for compensation. They simply left. The elders held a meeting near the temple. They spoke in low voices, avoiding names. Some believed the spirits had claimed the land itself. Others said the boundary between worlds had thinned too much, torn open by the broken ritual and the unpaid debt. The monk returned once more, standing at the edge of the alley, refusing to enter. "This place remembers," he said, "and memory is heavier than death." At night, I watched from the window as lights across the alley went dark one by one. Houses emptied, silence settled in layers. The banana tree rustled even when there was no wind, its leaves brushing against nothing. Sometimes, I saw 2 figures beneath it. One wrapped in a shawl, one dripping water onto the soil. They never approached the road. They never followed those who left. They only watched, patient, satisfied, as if guarding something that finally belonged to them. The house at the end of the alley no longer felt like a home. It felt like a marker. A warning left behind for those who might forget that some debts cannot be paid with objects alone. And that when the dead come back to ask for things, they may not stop at belongings. Chapter 14. The Man with the Lamp. In the end, only one person remained in the alley. It was me. Everyone else had gone, some quietly, some in the middle of the night, leaving doors unlocked and possessions behind. The houses stood hollow and dark, like empty ribs lining the narrow path. At night, the silence pressed so hard against my ears that I could hear my own heartbeat echo through the rooms. I stayed not because I was brave, but because I had nowhere else to go. Every evening, just before sunset, I lit an oil lamp and placed it by the front door. My grandmother used to do the same, saying that light reminded wandering spirits which side they belonged to. Now, I wasn't sure whether I was guiding them away or guiding myself back. The first night alone, I heard footsteps again. Slow, familiar. They stopped just beyond the circle of light cast by the lamp. I did not look up. The monk's warning echoed in my mind. Do not meet their eyes. Do not acknowledge their presence. So I sat still, counting my breaths, listening as the air shifted, heavy with the smell of wet earth and old fabric. Sometimes, I felt someone standing close enough that I could sense the shape of their body. The bend of a spine, the tilt of a head, Other times, there were two presences, one colder than the other, dripping softly onto the floor, each drop landing with careful patience. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the lamp flickered violently. The flame stretched upward, bending toward the darkness, as if responding to a call. For a brief moment, I saw shadows move at the edge of the light, two figures overlapping. Never fully separate, never fully merged. One night, a voice spoke. Not behind me. Inside my head. "You keep the light well," it said, gentle, approving. I knew that voice. My hands shook, but I did not answer. Another voice followed, lower, damp, closer. "He can stay." The pressure in the room lifted slightly after that. The footsteps retreated, the air warmed, just enough for me to breathe again. From that night on, I understood my role. I was not a victim. I was not a survivor. I was a boundary. As long as the lamp burned, the alley remained closed, claimed, watched, remembered, and as long as I stayed, the dead did not need to wander any further. But every flame runs out eventually. And when it does, someone else will have to decide whether to light it again.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The Things That Still Belong to the Dead. The lamp did not go out all at once. It dimmed slowly, night after night, as if something unseen was drinking from its flame. I refilled the oil carefully, never spilling a drop, never letting it burn unattended. Still, the light grew weaker, thinner, less certain of its purpose. On the final night, the alley was completely silent. No insects. No wind. No footsteps. At 1:13 a.m., the flame stopped flickering. It stood perfectly still. That was when I felt it, two presences standing just beyond the edge of the light. Not hostile, not restless, merely waiting, the way someone waits for a door to be opened from the inside. I finally understood. The dead had never been asking for objects. Not truly. The shawl, the bracelet, the ashes, those were only excuses. Anchors. What they wanted was acknowledgement, correction, balance. When my uncle confessed, he offered himself without realizing it. When the monk spoke of replacement, the choice had already been made. And when the village left, the land itself had been freed from witnesses. Only one thing remained unfinished. Me. The lamp guttered once. A soft hand brushed my shoulder, warm this time. Familiar. Another presence stood closer, colder, dripping faintly onto the floor. They did not touch me again. A voice spoke, not aloud, but inside my bones. "Keep what is ours." I looked down at the lamp. At the house. At the alley that no longer belonged to the living. And I understood the final rule. Some belongings of the dead cannot be returned, burned, or buried. They must be guarded, remembered, passed down. That night, I placed the lamp into a small wooden box and sealed it shut. In the morning, I locked the house for the last time and walked away without looking back. But people still say that if you pass that alley after dark, you might see a faint glow where no house should be. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear two sets of footsteps, one dry, one wet, circling a man who never leaves. Because the dead did not take everything with them. They left something behind. A watcher. And a warning. Never keep what belongs to the dead. And never believe they will stop asking for it. Some say the spirits eventually moved on. Others say they are still there, waiting quietly in the dark places where light no longer reaches. Because the dead do not always seek fear. They seek balance. And if you ever hear a knock at night, slow, patient, familiar, ask yourself carefully before answering. Is it someone asking for help? Or someone asking for what you should have never kept?
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.